Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So when it comes to NHL fandom and NHL social media, there are sometimes such hot button debate topics that emerge on social media where they really hit the zeitgeist and it feels like everybody has an opinion on it. Most recently, Michkov versus Ivan Demidov. Montreal Canadiens and Philadelphia Flyers fans have just absolutely went to war when it comes to debating these two young Russian wingers. So I decided to ask you guys on Instagram to submit me some of these both current hot button debate topics or just all time. For example, I think in the thumbnail, I have Henrik Lundqvist versus Carey Price. So we're going to go through this right now. I'm going to respond to some of your guys' very controversial topics, whether it's an overarching thing, whether it's two players. We're going to go through it. I think I got some really good ones. I got like 15. So let's not waste any time. Up first, we got a classic one, Slav or Laugh, as of right now and in the future. And I think right now it is kind of debate. Slafkovsky obviously really broke out last year with 50 points. Lafreniere as well. I would slightly lean Lafreniere, considering he is a little bit older, was better last season. But I think long term, it's really not that much of a debate, considering Slafkovsky's progression has just been so impressive from what he did as a rookie to now at 19 years old, having 50 goddamn points. And when you look at the physical tools, I think are far more impressive than Lafreniere, and they are 2022 draftee versus 2020. And it's not like Lafreniere's an August birthday while Slafkovsky was like in October. He's a full 2.5 years younger than Lafreniere. So I think he definitely has more potential if he continues to trend the way that he does. And given they're both trending past, it took Lafreniere longer. And he is finding his groove. He's going to be a very good player. But I still think Slafkovsky really has potential franchise superstar level potential, while Lafreniere probably more so like 80-ish points is probably his ceiling, which is still fantastic, but I'm going to go Slafkovsky in terms of all time. Next up from Jack, Crosby. Should he stay in Pittsburgh or leave? And I'm personally, although like I'm going to go with stay for a Sidney Crosby. I think there is something nice to Sidney Crosby, not going to some different team. Not saying that would tarnish his legacy. Yes, he would have a better chance at winning a Stanley Cup elsewhere than the Pittsburgh Penguins that have back-to-back years missed the playoffs and are like the oldest team in the entire NHL. But I do think there is something that to just sticking with one goddamn team. You saw Mario do it. You saw plenty of other all-time legends do that. And I like that. I do like that. And it's not like Sidney Crosby only has one Stanley Cup and needs to go win another or no Stanley Cups. The dude has 3 Stanley Cups. In terms of his all-time rankings, if he goes to the Colorado Avalanche and wins a Stanley Cup, that's not going to like massively increase his overall legacy. So I'm kind of team stay. And I do like the idea of the Pittsburgh Penguins kind of just fading into irrelevancy instead of him getting traded and the Pittsburgh Penguins like really jump-starting their rebuild. So I'm definitely more so team stay, both for Crosby in terms of cool being on only one team and also from New York Islanders. It would be better for them. Next up from Lowrick, we got Caufield versus Boldy. I'm personally very high on Matthew Boldy. I'm also very high on Cole Caufield, though. Let me just say that. But I think Matthew Boldy heading into next season, I think he's really due to break out. And what really separates both of them, I think Cole Caufield has a higher goal scoring ceiling, but Matthew Boldy is just so much better defensively. He's arguably like the best defensive left wing in the entire NHL. I feel like that really gets underrated. So I think Matthew Boldy is the more complete player right now, but both of these guys are going to be future a top 10 right wing for Cole Caufield, a top 10 left wing for Matthew Boldy. So they're both fantastic players. I personally just like Matthew Boldy's overall game a little bit more than Cole Caufield. Shesterkin or Hellebuyck, and this is a battle of regular season versus postseason. I'm personally going to go with Igor Shesterkin, considering the fact he's still been very good since his Vezina. Well, he was fantastic in his Vezina win in 2022, but even the past 2 years has been around 9-10-ish. And then in the playoffs, this guy just elevates his game to a whole nother level. We talk about paying goaltenders. I think they should pay goaltenders. A guy like Igor Shesterkin that elevates his game. Some other guys that maybe shit the bed come playoff time, I'd be a little bit worried, but he is just such a playoff performer. While Hellebuyck, I don't blame him for the playoff loss this season when they lost in 5 games, and he was just kind of horrendous, as well as their defense. But I think when you have a guy like Shesterkin that in the past 3 years has put up historic performances in a given series. Personally, for me, I'm going to go with Shesterkin. But if for the regular season, I think Hellebuyck is the safer option. But at the end of the day, what do we play for? We play for the goddamn Stanley Cup. Sticking with the New York Rangers and a Canadian team, Fox versus Hughes this year has been interesting. I personally am more so team Adam Fox, but I'm like, Adam Fox was my number 11 or 12 player in the NHL, and Quinn Hughes was like my number 12 or 13. It is so goddamn close. They're 2A, 2B to Cale Makar's number 1. For me personally, I think the overall body of work for Adam Fox the last 4 years, every single year finishing top 5 in Norris voting. I thought he should have won the Norris in 2023. And this year he probably would have finished second if he played the full season, but he missed all of November. So for me, more so of the consistency of Adam Fox. Not that Quinn Hughes has not been fantastic, but especially the consistency defensively year over year. I do agree Quinn Hughes was better last year, so I'm not going to call you dumb or anything if you think that Quinn Hughes is better, because literally going off of last year, he was better. But I think the overall body of work as of right now, I trust Adam Fox to have a Norris finalist level season heading into next year than say a Quinn Hughes, but they're the clear-cut second and third best defenseman in the NHL heading into next season. We got another Crosby one. This one's interesting from Connor McBikey. Ovi versus Crosby's career, but without considering the team success. But I think we agree. Crosby's ahead of him. 3 Stanley Cups. He probably shouldn't have won a single Conn Smythe, but that's a different debate. But still, he has been such a better overall winner. Alexander Ovechkin has only made 1 Eastern Conference Finals in his goddamn career. I feel like that gets forgotten about a lot. But if you remove the team success, the trophies obviously lean in Ovechkin's direction. 9 Rocket Richards to Sidney Crosby's 2. Ovechkin does he have an Art Ross? But Crosby has more with 2. And Crosby only has 2 Hearts, 2 Ovechkins, 3 Hearts. So I do agree. The trophy case would be clearly in Ovechkin's favor. But throughout their career, Crosby, in my opinion, was the more complete overall player. So it's hard, even though the trophy case, mainly because of those Rocket Richards, I still think I would lean Sidney Crosby, because when Sidney Crosby was healthy, he just was the better player than Alexander Ovechkin. He was the more complete player than Alexander Ovechkin. So I think if you divorce that, I think I'm still going with Sidney Crosby, even though I like Alexander Ovechkin a lot more as a fucking hockey player and an overall person as Sidney Crosby. But I think in this, I still would go Crosby despite the trophy case, leaning in Alexander Ovechkin's favor. Next up from Owen, he says, is Draisaitl nothing without McDavid? I think that this is so stupid in my opinion. When looking at it, I would understand if in the postseason, Leon Draisaitl was so far away from Connor McDavid. But Leon Draisaitl still has like the 5th highest points per game in NHL history. McDavid's at like 1.52. Draisaitl's at 1.4. So the fact that this guy is on par with McDavid come playoff time, maybe not so much in the regular season, I hate that debate. And when looking at it, Draisaitl still puts up 100-plus point seasons, and yes, he does a lot of that on the power play, but for the past 3 seasons, the wingers that he has had on that second line is not that impressive, so it's not a shocker that his even strength numbers aren't like top 3 in the entire NHL. Draisaitl's still fantastic. I understand if you have him like in the 6 to 8 range for best players in the NHL, but he's a no-doubt top 10 guy. He is a no-doubt top 10 guy and has proven that yet again in the regular season, in the postseason. Next up from Jesse, Price or Lundqvist all time. And for this one, it's close. In my opinion, they're like the 10th and 11th greatest goalies of all time. This debate really comes down to, would you rather have a 99 overall goalie for like a 4-year stretch, Carey Price from around 2013 to 2017, or would you rather have a 97 overall goalie for a full decade? Henrik Lundqvist, upon entering the NHL for like 10 straight seasons, finished top 6 in Vezina voting every single year, played around 60 games a season. He was a definition of consistency. He also won a Vezina. Yes, he never won a Hart. So I do think Price has the better 3 to 4 year peak. He's the better single season peak without a goddamn doubt. But in my opinion, I think Lundqvist is greater all time because he had more so consistency and obviously played a lot more games, avoided those injuries. So for me personally, I'm going to go with Henrik Lundqvist in terms of who is greater all time, but these are both no doubt Hall of Fame guys and just absolute studs. And honestly, both of them, their managers kind of failed them in terms of surrounding them with elite talent. Both of them probably should have a Stanley Cup in their careers. Now from Matt, we got the Demidov versus the Matvei Michkov debate. I'm team Matvei Michkov. I'm not going to lie. When looking at it, in terms of watching them, they're both fantastic prospects. So tie, in my opinion, the eye test is very close, but I'm going to go based off the production. And when looking at Matvei Michkov, what he did in his draft year in the KHL, was just absolutely insane. Historic stuff. And Demidov was also great in the MHL, but considering the eye test of what I saw him do against grown adults, both in his draft year as well as his draft year +1, that gives me the nod for Matvei Michkov. He looked very good in the rookie game this year. The rookie game, was it, Saturday or Friday? So for me, it's Matvei Michkov. I think he is going to be the better player, but both of them are going to be like top 10 players in the entire NHL. It is very close for me, they're both superstar prospects. Next up, we got Slaf versus Cooley from Lorik as well. When looking at this, I think that after the back 2/3 of the season that Slafkovsky had, I'm going to go with Slafkovsky. Cooley was my number one prospect in the 2022 draft. Slafkovsky was number two, but I think the overall physical tools of a Slafkovsky, Logan Cooley only at 5'10". As of right now, the way that they're trending, I think Logan Cooley's going to be great. In my opinion, I think he's going to peak at like 95 points and be the Utah Hockey Club's franchise center. But Slafkovsky at this point is looking like he is a potential unicorn in the NHL. Mikko Rantanen 2.0, something like that. Next up, we got it from Michael Nash. Prime Bergeron versus Prime Barkov. And when looking at this, I would give the advantage in terms of defensive consistency year over year to Patrice Bergeron. Shocker, the 6-time Selke winner, but I think I would go with Prime Barkov. Maybe I'm era biased because I grew up watching both, but like Barkov is more so around my age. So I personally would go with Barkov because he has shown the ceiling of putting up 95 to 105 point pace. Yes, maybe it has been a slightly higher scoring NHL that Barkov has been playing in, but I think Barkov has the higher offensive ceiling. And when you look at Bergeron outside of like 2019 when he was on like 95 point pace, but even then he was the third best offensive player on his line. Meanwhile, Barkov has had these insane numbers. He's had good talent, don't get me wrong, but he didn't really play in the same line as Huberdeau, and he doesn't play in the same line with Chuck. So when looking at Barkov, I think he is better offensively, and still, even though defense definitely matters for a center, I care more about offense. I don't think that's shocking anybody. So as a result, if you wanted to give me 2022, 2024 Barkov over any version of Patrice Bergeron, I'm probably going with Alexander Barkov, given the offensive ceiling. Next up, Tyler Seguin versus Taylor Hall from Liam, the battle of the top two picks in the 2010 NHL draft. And this is tough because if you go off singular peak best year, it's clearly Taylor Hall. Taylor Hall, the guy won the goddamn heart. But I think overall career, I think Sagan's going to end up having the better career, just considering the fact that Taylor Hall's coming off massive ACL tear. Meanwhile, Tyler Seguin just had one of his best season of the past 4 to 5 years, and looks like that he's going to continue to be like a solid 60-ish point guy for the next 2 to 3 years. But when looking at Seguin, he was a legit borderline top 5 center throughout the mid-2010s. He was so good for the Dallas Stars, him and Jamie Benn. He was more consistent season over season versus Taylor Hall that would put up around point per game, but then the following 2 seasons be like around 60-ish points. I would go with Tyler Seguin, probably, and Tyler Seguin also has a Stanley Cup, so that does factor into this. So when looking at it, I think Tyler Seguin has the better career, and when it's all said and done, will have the better career. No doubt. We got something from Nat Remblay, 24. LTIR cheating like Vegas and Tampa did. I don't see it as cheating. I'm not going to lie. When looking at it, they didn't do anything illegal. Is it a little bit scummy, faking an injury? Nikita Kucherov. Let me rephrase that. Extending an injury a couple weeks, because I'm sure Nikita Kucherov was hurt. I'm sure Mark Stone has had some type of injury, but extending the injury past the trade deadline until literally game 1 of the playoffs is a little bit shady. Yes, but the NHL could change it if they thought it was such a big problem. And until they change it, I don't blame teams for being creative. You got to do whatever it takes to win. So I don't see it really as cheating. I'm not going to lie. And I hate when people be like, it's unmoral. Like, dude, they won the Stanley Cup. You can lose in the first round to them, but you have the moral high ground. Who gives a fuck? And it's not like actually like immoral to fucking throw someone on goddamn LTIR. So as a result, I don't think it's something that bad. And then lastly, we got from Cedric, Malkin or Kane. And this was a debate that last summer really popped off that I started on Twitter. I personally go up getting Malkin. I think he had the better 5-year prime, considering the fact that he won the Hart. He won 2 Rosses. He had 2 other Hart runner-ups in like a 5 to 6 year period. He was the 3rd best player in the entire NHL. It went Crosby, Ovechkin, Malkin. Pretty straightforward. Patrick Kane was a top 5 player in his prime, maybe a top 10 player in his prime, but Evgeny Malkin was a second-line center with not the best winger talent, putting up absolutely ungodly numbers. And again, the one time that Crosby went down with those concussions, he won the Hart. That's just how special of a player. And even like, I think it was 2008 or something, Crosby was healthy and he was the best player on the goddamn team. So I personally go with Evgeny Malkin. Not saying Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane was on my top 50 greatest players, top 40 greatest players of all time, but I think Evgeny Malkin just gets underrated considering the fact that he had to play second-line center. And the winning, there's not really an although they both have a Conn Smythe, they both have 3 Stanley Cups, and they both aged pretty well. So I think it really just comes down to like the 4 to 5 year prime, 5 to 6 year prime. And for me, that kind of without a doubt leans towards Evgeny Malkin. So he would be my pick there. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this video? What are some other controversial topics? Feel free to drop them down below and I'll give you my answers, and I'll be seeing the next one.